One of the great stars of young middle school is this young man next to me, Trent. Trent, tell me about, Trent Francis is his name. Tell me what this means to you and people who live in your neighborhood.
Well, this means that now every time someone sees a black person on TV, they do not see him as a criminal or athlete. They can see him as a president, a lawyer, or a doctor.
And speaking of things to do when you grow up, have you thought about what you'd like to be?
Well, now I can think of myself as the next president of the United States of America.
The next president. And so Brian, so when someone tells this young man that and he says that he wants to be the next president of the United States, he doesn't have to feel anymore that that's a dream too big for him. I'll send it back up to you.
That's all you need to know about today, Ron. And let's look at the current president of the United States. This is the document signing in the president's room of the Capitol.
I was told not to swipe the pen.
Two more, don't
Okay.
It might be the fifth in a row. As the father of a lefty, I'm very happy to see it. The signing ceremony in the president's room, so named for just this purpose. Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act 1964 in that room. Other presidents have used it to work through the night and sign the documents of government. Again, that first set, all part of the great euphemism, continuity of government, to make sure the machinery of government is up and running as this new administration is. And it was just a few minutes into the ceremony after 12 noon, about 12:03, whitehouse.gov, the website, quietly switched over from the visual display of the Bush White House, as it's been for 8 years, to the new president, the 44th president of the United States, Barack Obama. We'll take our first break here in a good long while, but there's a good long bit of coverage to come. We'll be back from Capitol Hill in Washington right after this.
What can you be sure of in times like these? You can be sure of the fact that we are one of the world's best capitalized banks. That our capabilities are backed by 140 years of experience. Above all, you can be sure of our commitment to a relationship we call you and us. You and us. UBS.
It's time to celebrate an ale with a whole new flavor. Budweiser American Ale, born of Cascade hops and caramel malted barley for a full-bodied taste and bright, hoppy finish. Here's to a great American ale. Budweiser American Ale.
My Bliss? Lips that feel soft, smooth, kissable. My Bliss Dex? Silk and Shine. Real silk extracts with a touch of shine. Discover Bliss. Discover Bliss Dex.
Goes far when you need it. Stays put when you don't. With a powerful magnet inside the spray head, magnetite docking makes Delta more than just a faucet. See what Delta can do.
A tragic accident is not what it seems.
He said he'd love me forever.
New ER, Thursday 10/9 Central on NBC.
A sale like this comes but once a year. It's the annual floor sample sale at Beautiful Rooms. Save 50 to 70% off fine furniture and accessories from the industry's finest manufacturers. Sofas, lamps, leather, artwork, home office, and more. Our floor samples are 50 to 70% off. With savings this great, you can create the room you've only dreamed of. We make your imagination come alive during Beautiful Rooms' annual floor sample sale. It happens only once a year and will be over soon.
NBC News coverage of the inauguration of Barack Obama continues. Here again is Brian Williams.
We are back, and if he's not careful, this is the part of the day where the new president might just relax and sit back and realize what has happened to him today before the burdens of office come crashing down. He has the parade awaiting later, and then a series of inaugural balls, 10 in all. And according to the revised schedule, he is due to arrive at their 10th and final inaugural ball tonight at 2:35 a.m. So that's more like Wednesday, well into Wednesday. This is the traditional luncheon. As our cameras pan the room, you'll see every prominent face. That sure is the New York political delegation right there. Both of New York's senators. Senator Clinton has yet to resign from the Senate, pending her new job, Secretary of State. There you see Chelsea Clinton, who we watched grow up in the White House, and of course in the background, President Clinton. As I mentioned, all three of them were at a Washington gathering last night, arriving in separate crisp motorcades. There you see Senator John and Cindy McCain at the luncheon behind Al Gore. This luncheon makes for some amazing political pairings, and you could just look at these pictures forever, which we will do as we talk to some more friends. Oh my goodness, there's Bob Byrd and Jimmy Carter, Senator Byrd of West Virginia. Kelly O'Donnell standing by in the Capitol building for us. Kelly?
Brian, it has been fascinating to see all of the activity here, and I want to draw your attention to something that happened just a short time ago when Senator Hillary Clinton entered the room and went right for her Senate colleague, John Cornyn of Texas. Senator Cornyn could be the single objector today in the Senate, which could prevent a voice vote confirmation, effectively making her Secretary of State today. Now, from across the rotunda, it certainly appeared to me there was a friendly negotiation happening, and we don't know exactly what was said, but it was a lengthy conversation as all of these dignitaries have been moving through. That was certainly a notable moment, and we expect President Obama to be passing through yet again, his third time in the span of 15 minutes or so, through the rotunda to join those who are gathered for lunch. As we talked about a bit earlier, the meal will be a three-course featuring wonderful delicacies. There will be seafood, duck, lovely dessert, and they will be dining on china that is the replica of President Abraham Lincoln's china. But what was really noticeable here is, in addition to the ceremony of this day, perhaps there was some arm-twisting politics going on as well. Brian?
Kelly O'Donnell in the U.S. Capitol building, thanks. And we want to bring in several more friends of ours, beginning with Mark Whitaker, who is our NBC News Washington Bureau Chief, who's a lot of things, actually, former editor of Newsweek magazine. And I've been sitting here today thinking, Mark, you went to Harvard with about half of the incoming administration. I haven't spoken with you today yet, certainly since the oath of office. Lester and I were remarking that no drama. Obama kept it together. None of the rest of us did.
Right. No, it was remarkable. You know, you've been talking about the memorable lines in the speech, and I was thinking, you know, obviously talking about the fact that his father could not be served in a local restaurant as recently as 60 years ago. But there were a couple of other lines that I thought really only Obama could have said. One of them was, he talked about the cynics, who are now worried about the decline of America. And he said, what the cynics fail to realize is that the ground has shifted beneath our feet. And when you think about it, his whole campaign was predicated on that notion, that there was a seismic shift that was taking place in America, an ethnic shift, a generational shift that he could tap into. And that is why he's president today. And of course, since he began that campaign, the earth has shifted yet again with the economy. And we don't know what's ahead, but you know, he is, I think, a unique figure who is obviously coming to power at a unique time, and I think that was captured in the speech.
And Doris Kearns Goodwin is here, whose place in this campaign and the life of this very young presidency is now cemented as author, among your many works, of Team of Rivals, which Senator, now President Obama, publicly identified as among his favorite books and something he used as a bit of a political model. And cast modesty aside, it's now been reported that he also approached you for guidance on this speech, and I want to hear your views of what the 18-minute address we just heard.
Well, what struck me about it was that it was almost at a more profound level than the normal speech, where it would be domestic foreign policy, divide up which and which. It was really a return to what it was that made America special in the world. You know, we're never just a country. We always were this ideal that ordinary people could govern themselves, that you could rise to the level of your own ambitions. And he's telling the world again, we'll be a beacon of hope once more. We'll be that America that led the Allies in the World War II. We'll be the America of the Marshall Plan. And he's telling the American people once more, if we return to these values, we can do anything. You know, there's a sense in which if we're individuals scattered across the country, we can't do a lot. But FDR used to say, but if we come together, nothing can stop a democracy with the spirit that it has. And I think it reached that level to make people feel maybe we're being summoned to another time. This is our generation. Maybe not mine, I'm a little older, but maybe your generation. And that's a great feeling. Like Roosevelt said, rendezvous with destiny. This generation now has a chance to feel larger than their own lives. And that's very special when you feel it.
And speaking of very special, Doris, as we're talking, we're looking at these scenes from the luncheon. Everyone's being strongly urged to take their seats for the entrance of the new president, Charlie Rangel, veteran congressman from Harlem. We saw the Kerrys earlier. We saw the Clintons earlier. Again, everywhere you look, there's a name brand political name. And in the moments we have here before Obama walks in, FDR had some history at this luncheon.
Well, FDR had a housekeeper who was really like a dictator, and he asked for chicken a la king to be served at his luncheon, and she decided that it wouldn't stay hot long enough, so instead she gave him chicken salad, and the joke afterwards was there was so much celery we couldn't find any chicken in the salad. She once served him 6 sweetbreads in a row, and he said, I've had 6 sweetbreads, I've got to have something other. I'm getting angry, I'm getting irritated, I bid a foreign power today, and still she kept her own dictatorial control. So I think this one's a little more organized than that, and based on Lincoln once again.
That's exactly right.
Who didn't have a huge appetite and who was rather thin and drank a lot of water. So he wasn't really a great man to eat, but he loved fish.
By the way, that was one of the lions of the House of Representatives, John Dingell of the state of Michigan. We just saw his back as he was talking to Senator Clinton, with Al Gore also in the frame. There's Craig Robinson, Michelle's brother, and would-be Treasury Secretary Geithner, not among those ready to go. No hearing yet. He had a, shall we say, a tax issue. So there's a lot of talk about what the new president badly wants to be his tenure in office. President Obama said again, as we look at Dan Inouye, President Obama said again that he wants him to serve as his team, that he can't name a better guy. Senator Kennedy just behind Senator Inouye, a Medal of Honor recipient, lost an arm in World War II on a hillside not far from where Bob Dole suffered his grievous injuries. There you see Ted Kennedy, his wife Vicki, in and out. Imagine deciding the place setting stars at an event like this.
I wouldn't want to be that person.
Danny Inouye and Bob Dole shared a ward when they came back from the war as they were being healed with Phil Hart, the late senator from Michigan, the 3 of them, and then ended up in the Senate.
Hey, Brian, one of the things I've been thinking about is at the funeral for our colleague Tim Russert this summer, which was so difficult for all of us. Luke, his son, arranged for Obama and McCain to sit together. And there were a couple rows ahead of me, and I remember looking at them and thinking, you know, one of them is going to be president and is going to inherit all of this power, all of this ceremony, and the other is just going to go back to the Senate, and this is going to happen in a couple of months. And it's an amazing thing about our political system.
You know, there's a funny comment that Buchanan made to Lincoln when he came to see him at the White House. He said, if you are as happy entering this White House as I am in leaving it, you are a very happy man indeed. I sometimes wonder if that's part of the way President Bush may be feeling. He's home, he'll be home.
You know, I went out to Bull Run the other day to look at the Manassas battlefield because I wanted to have the residents of them in my mind 5 months after Lincoln takes office. And it dawned on me that when I was born in 1940, there were people alive who were witness to that carnage and that retreat and the beginning of that long time. They could have been 10 years old, in fact, and they were then 85 or 90. 2 lifetimes, and we're talking about the Civil War. So history does move more swiftly, even as it seems to move more slowly.
You wonder what the burden is and when it's going to feel in Obama's heart. I mean, Lincoln said if he'd ever known the tension he would feel from the time of his inauguration to the firing of Fort Sumter, he could not have thought he could have lived through it. And FDR said that first day, "I've never been afraid of anything except fire as a paraplegic, worried that he might not be able to get out a door if a fire came. But now do I have the strength to take the country through this?" It's going to dawn on him at a certain point, and maybe not at the luncheon, maybe not till he gets there tonight.
Well, have the expectations ever been higher, though, for a president? Because you think of the way the country has changed just since November in terms of the worsening economic situation, and then the expectations of various groups who think that if not now, when, in terms of political agendas.
Let's go out to correspondent John Yang, covers the White House for NBC News. Look what he's covering now at Andrews Air Force Base. John?
Brian, here it is. The president, or the former president, now private citizen George W. Bush, arriving on a Marine helicopter designated Executive One since he's no longer president. This is part of the presidential fleet flying as a guest of the current president, the new president, Barack Obama. He's here. He's going to speak to, go into a hangar here, speak to a crowd of former cabinet, now former cabinet, former staff, say farewell. It will not be televised. It's closed to the press. The Bush people are very mindful of the long goodbye that Bill Clinton had here 8 years ago when he spoke, when it was open to the press, and when he seemed to work the crowd forever. It seemed like he was never going to leave, so they're very mindful of that. As we arrived here shortly after the inaugural ceremony finished, we saw a number of officials coming off, Bush administration officials coming off Air Force One. Joel Kaplan, the former deputy chief of staff, a number of other officials. I've been trying to find out, I've actually been sort of trading emails and texts with a number of the people. I've been trying to find out if they watched the ceremony from inside Air Force One. Of course, there are satellite televisions, satellite reception for televisions throughout the plane. If they did, that's got to be the classiest airport lounge I can think of. Brian?
Yeah, John Yang, who we should add, has flown a good number of miles on that aircraft as well, capping off a career in print journalism, having seen the light and joined NBC News after years at the Washington Post, joined NBC News to cover the White House. Though, John, it should be pointed out, as I used to travel that aircraft as well, JetBlue had live satellite television on its planes before the technology was installed on Air Force One, which always kind of got to me. But some of the more haunting images, of course, on 9/11 had to do with that. Now we see the boarding doors are down fore and aft on the helicopter. What John just reported was highly controversial. The news media pushed back to try to cover the president's remarks in the hangar. There's former President Bush. But we all remember that day, the grim weather, President Clinton's long and slow goodbye from Washington. The Mark Rich pardon scandal was crashing down throughout Washington, careening around the city. The president had not been to sleep the night before George W. Bush's inauguration. He looked drawn and exhausted, and finally was wheels up and left Washington, D.C. Mark Whitaker, everything now changes. The city is defined by so many people as really a small southern town, so quickly reflects the new administration.
No, I mean, culturally, I was actually at an event last night, a Jazz at Lincoln Center event. They all came down from New York, and it was inspired by a conversation over dinner between Wynton Marsalis, the great trumpeter, and Sandra Day O'Connor about the comparison between the Constitution and jazz, and that was sort of the theme of the evening. But I think somebody mentioned before, social life is going to come back. Obama is not a morning person. He's a night person. He's a night owl. He's going to be out there giving state dinners. But I think it's going to be bipartisan. I think that there is going to be, you know, Catherine Graham, the publisher of the Washington Post, I used to work for, and was a great, in addition to everything else, a great businesswoman, but also somebody who brought people together in Washington. In her later years, really lamented how that had changed, and people didn't socialize, and they didn't put aside their differences after hours and socialize again. And I think that's going to be back in Washington, and it's a healthy thing. But I think that there's also going to be a generational change, younger people, and a fresher culture here.
Now, Lester Holt is the newest empty nester at the table. My wife and I are still at it. We've got one left. And Lester, I keep hearing, and this rings so true because of the way they've raised their daughters, the Obamas want to be Friday night soccer team pizza parents. They don't necessarily want to host the big gatherings at the White House. They want to sit on the floor in the dens of friends and have a slice of pizza.
Which makes me wonder if they're not going to disappoint some in Washington who are thinking of this now kind of on-the-town hip couple. Not that they're not a hip couple, but they are family people first. And we talked earlier about, you know, the girls will make their own beds at the White House. They will have chores, just as they had in Chicago. They, by all accounts, are going to a tough school. They'll have homework. You know, Barack Obama, as he ran for president, did not really embrace many black issues, even as African Americans slowly came to him. He didn't talk about a lot of issues. One of the things he did talk about, though, was parenting. He said we need black fathers to realize that responsibility does not end at conception. That raised a lot of eyebrows, and it puts the focus. He understands that this family is a role model for a lot of families in this country.
Well, let's speak even more candidly. There was suspicion because of his embrace by so many white Americans early on. There were all kinds of subterranean issues going on as the Obama campaign started to chug to life.
Was he black enough?
Right.
Was he black enough? I pulled up some articles a while ago. I forgot how much had been written 2 years ago on this very subject. And then later, as the Jeremiah Wright issue came about, he reminded us, hey, remember when I was, you know, when I wasn't black enough? But that was a conversation. And you go back even a little over a year, the Congressional Black Caucus was split, you know, between supporting him and supporting Hillary Clinton. So it was a slow turn. But what I think you'll see, and back to family, is that this is a family that understands what these daughters are going through. It's hard moving kids. I've moved kids, and as a former Air Force brat, you know, moving in the middle of a school year is not easy. So there's a lot of family challenges that I don't think they're going to lose sight of.
And Mark, a lot of this discussion that people are going to start to get a master's degree and goes on in other places like the website, theroot.com, by Professor Gates at Harvard. A lot of discussion that Barack Obama did not have the classic American black experience. The descendant from slaves, his wife Michelle did, but Barack Obama, as he is wont to say, is the product of a white woman from Kansas and a black man from Kenya. A true, by definition, African American, however.
Well, in a way, I think that's what made it possible for him to believe that he could do what he's done, to become president. I think he didn't have a lot of the psychological baggage, I think, that people who come out of that heritage have. You know, he's part of, you were talking earlier about his relationship with the civil rights generation. David Remnick and others have written about the difference between the civil rights leaders, John Lewis and others, being the Moses generation, the generation that sort of got African Americans to the promised land but didn't cross over. And Obama being part of the Joshua generation, the generation that actually came to see the promised land. And, you know, we think about Dr. King, who we're also celebrating the last few days, and that almost, it seemed kind of eerily prophetic speech that he gave the night before he was assassinated in Selma. And he said, you know, in Memphis, right, in Memphis, sorry, and that I may not get there with you, but I've seen the promised land. And maybe this is what he saw, that this was going to be possible within a couple of generations.
Christine King Ferris, who's Dr. King's sister, who's 80 years old, was here today, said to me the day that after he was elected, she said, Martin said we may not get there, but Obama did get us there. And but it took them a while. They were worried as well, I think, in the movement, Mark, the older blacks that he would run and not succeed.
Right.
And that they couldn't afford a high-profile failure.
Right.
If they were going to make the run, they wanted to succeed.
Right.
And he persuaded them that he could at some point.
There was also concern that he was so quickly embraced by white voters early on. And let's not beat around the bush. There was a lot of talk about his safety. A lot of African Americans worried about his safety.
There still is, and sadly it will continue. Tom will suspend our conversation here as we await the entrance of the new president. Lunch has fallen silent.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Vice President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden Jr. and Dr. Biden, escorted by Senator and Mrs. Bennett.
Remember the boll weevils in the Reagan years, the Phil Grahams, the Andy Irelands, who as members of another party saw the light, hopped over. Will we see that with this new unpopular president? Actually, hold your answer here while we bring in the new
unpopular president.
United States, Barack H. Obama and Mrs. Obama, escorted by Senator Feinstein and Mr. Blow.
Well, to answer your question, Brian, I don't think in this current crowd of Republicans on the Hill that you'll see a lot of people switching over. I do think that the Republicans have the same problem with this president that the Democrats had with Ronald Reagan, and which is how do you build a party across the country against this enormously popular figure. Now, we're at the beginning of his run, and we've got very difficult circumstances ahead of us. Everyone wishes him well, including Republicans, because the whole nation is at stake. But if he makes big mistakes along the way, then Republicans will seize on that. But they've got to figure out how to reinvent their party, because that party has been shattered. You look at the number of Republican senators who are not going to run for re-election, the low popularity poll of the president, the betrayal of their principles in the last 8 years at almost every level. And they've got a Herculean job ahead of them about how you put the party back together and what does it mean? What are the core values of this new Republican Party?
And that once dying breed of the moderate Republicans may be the ones that finally begin to get power once again.
We will, the next order of business here will be the benediction. The new president joked at this year's Al Smith dinner in New York that whoever gave him his middle name of Hussein sure wasn't expecting him to be president someday. He's greeting the Chief Justice. You see Associate Justice Breyer there in the foreground. Twice today so far he's been introduced as Barack H. Obama. There's Congressman Dingell from Michigan. Mayor Fenty. Washington, D.C. It really is a who's who politically. Orrin Hatch.
I've heard Barack's friends say how incredible it is to finally say to him, Mr. President.
Oh.
But if it's incredible to say that to him, can you imagine what it's like to him to hear it?
I'm just glad we're past having to call him President-elect.
Yeah, that was so annoying.
That's clunky. That's clunky. Yeah.
Well, there's politics going on down there as well. They give a big embrace to Orrin Hatch, who has said that he supports Tim Geithner for Treasury Secretary. They need to hang on to Hatch. So politics.
Even in the luncheon,
Valerie
politics.
Jarrett, great friend. Great family friend who's moved here to take over urban policy as the
She's
senior
an
advisor.
extraordinary woman.
He jokes that if he can, he will try to shake every hand in the room. And of course, the sheer number will prevent that today. Wow. Special greeting for Senator Byrd.
Oh, wow.
Unofficial historian of the U.S. Senate. Senator Kennedy, his wife Vicki, At some point, he has to sit down.
Kind of hard to do when you're walking on air.
Oh, how well said.
Well said.
The tradition of holding this inaugural luncheon began in 1953, actually, when President Eisenhower, Vice President Nixon, and 50 guests dined on cream chicken, baked ham, and potato puffs. Our menu, we think, is a bit more exciting. And believe it or not, the recipe page has been the most visited part of the inaugural website. So we are very honored today to be hosted in Statuary Hall, which served as the House chamber when Abraham Lincoln was a member of Congress. As president, he participated in the public inauguration ceremonies at the Capitol, even during the darkest days of the Civil War. As we approach the bicentennial of his birth, we honor his determination that those who have sacrificed for our country shall not have died in vain, and that this nation, under God, shall have a new birth of freedom. President Lincoln is also the inspiration for the painting we have chosen today. And this is the view of Yosemite Valley, of course, which happens to be in California, by Thomas Hill, strange, a 19th century painter that I very much love. It's on loan from the New York Historical Society, so it kind of binds New York and California. As the country struggled to emerge from the turmoil of the Civil War, many Americans looked west for the dawn of a new era. In tune with his times, President Lincoln signed the Yosemite land grant in order to protect the majestic wild beauty of the area. Thomas Hill painted the grandeur and the beauty of the American West that captured America's essence, our land of opportunity, optimism, and freedom. It is now my privilege to ask Dr. Barry Black, the chaplain distinguished of the United States Senate, to deliver the invocation, after which lunch will be served. Dr. Black. Thank you.
Let us pray. Lord of all nations, whose kingdom is above all earthly kingdoms, and who judges all lesser sovereignties, look with favor upon President Barack Obama, Vice President Joseph Biden, and members of the cabinet. Empower them with the wisdom, courage, and strength needed for our times, and protect them from any moral arrogance that obstructs the making of a world of justice, peace, and righteousness. Infuse them with a passion to act in ways pleasing to you. Lord, preserve their families in health and strength by your mercy and power, and may they find your grace sufficient for every need. We ask also that you would shower your blessings upon the American people. Give us the wisdom to support our new president with our prayers, patience, and perseverance. Bless now this luncheon and the nourishment we receive from your bounty. We pray in your sovereign name. Amen.
We'll stay with this as long as we can. At some point, the microphones and lights are going to be shut off to let these good people dine in peace without our hearing every word. There, a kind of nighttime descends on the room as we're about to be electronically ushered out. Senator Feinstein wasn't kidding. the menu page on the briefing book is voluminous, and it is the #1 most popular thing on the inaugural website, which somehow brings me to my friend Al Roker, who has made his way from the staging area at the Pentagon, where I saw you with the pride of D.C., Dumbarton High School earlier today, Al, to where you're going to be when this parade kicks off, across from the reviewing stand, correct?
Yeah, you know, Brian, I got to tell you, it was a very emotional trip. We were on one of the Presidential Inaugural Committee buses with the Brattleboro High School, and we were listening when President Obama took the oath of office, and a cheer went up on that bus, and there were people crying on the bus, and these are all very young people, high school students, all very moved. And as we came across the Memorial Bridge and the Washington Monument, you could see in the distance, and the Lincoln Memorial came up into the fore. And as we crossed over, we saw this sea of people. And as we continued along in between the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Memorial, the crowd grew, and we could see everybody on the bus. A hush fell over the bus. We were in awe of the number of people that had come to hear this president, to be part of this inaugural. And I got to tell you, it really moved. I had tears in my eyes. Our producer, the band director, even the bus driver was crying. It was a moment that I think this entire country is sharing. Republican, Independent, Democrat, everybody has these hopes with this president. And I got to tell you, it was one of the most moving moments in my life. To come across that bridge with this group of kids I've never met before, but we were all together, and that's the sense you get here. We're at the parade route where the president's going to review the parade. This sense of family, of the country coming together, that's what people are looking for, I think.
Al, I'd love to tell you that I have no idea what you're talking about, that everybody here kept their emotions thoroughly in check during the ceremony, but I'd be lying to you, my friend. How much leeway do you have with your camera? Can you show us the real estate, the lay of the land, and tell us what's going to happen?
Well, basically, this is obviously Pennsylvania Avenue. Of course, it's about a 1.2-mile route where the president will leave the east entrance of the Capitol, get in his limo, drive on Pennsylvania Avenue, and at some point, probably right about here, right now we've got buses with dignitaries coming. They'll get out, he and Mrs. Obama and Vice President Biden and Mrs. Biden, and they will walk along here and then come with me this way. Buddy, here we go. Just take a look. You'll see the inaugural route right over here. And there, of course, the reviewing stand. And the president will walk right by here. And as is tradition, Brian, as you know, he will ignore me. I will try to get a word in, and he will ignore me. And then you will make fun of me for being blown off by the 44th president of the United States.
Actually, as you know, the tradition is this. Barbara Bush kissed Willard Scott, and that's my only concern, is that he's going to try to lay one on you.
Well, I can understand that, because he is a very attractive man. And I know that, you know, he will find me attractive. But no, this is, I'm sure talking to Al Roker is the last thing on President Obama's mind. But if Mrs. Obama feels the need to come over and give me a peck on the cheek, who am I to say? You know, and I have to apologize for my voice. I'm starting to sound like Harvey Fierstein, but what can I tell you?
Al, as Comedy Central's coverage of the inauguration continues, we will check back in with you. Always a pleasure. Thank you very much, my friend Al Roker, who will be plainly visible to the new first family on the parade route, especially if he takes off his hat. We're going to take a break. As Al mentioned, the parade route, the one laughing matter, of course, is security, the most heavily defended event in the history of this republic, all to make sure we have a safe and happy event for the millions of people who've come in this city today. We'll cover all of it, every inch of it, when our coverage continues from Washington right after this.
Need help navigating your way to retirement? Roll over your 401k into a Fidelity IRA. We'll guide you through the paperwork and help choose the investments that are right for you. Contact a rollover specialist today. In times like these, we'll help you find your way. Call 1-800-FIDELITY or visit fidelity.com today.
Kids always take too much, especially when it comes to bath tissue. But with Charmin Ultra Soft, our softest ever, you can use less because it's more absorbent than the leading value brand. Charmin Ultra Soft.
We asked one woman to wash with soap, another with Dove. If you could see the difference, you'd see soap leaves an invisible layer of scum on your skin. Dove leaves no soap scum. For smooth, clean skin, feel the difference for yourself.
New Knight Rider, Wednesday, 8/7 Central on NBC.
Westfield Bank is proud of our community. Like any good neighbor, we respond to neighborhood needs. Each year, Westfield Bank's Future Fund donates hundreds of thousands of dollars to support projects that empower children, our community's future. Since 2002, we've given nearly $2 million to local community-based programs. Our Future Fund is one of the ways we say thanks for being a good neighbor. Westfield Bank, community banking redefined.
We're back. Our coverage continues, and that was really the first moment, if you were watching today on NBC this morning, when Washington took full measure of what the new First Lady had chosen to wear on what is so far the most exciting day of her life. And since this requires your humble host to skate outside of his lane a bit, we have asked a much more able person to come on and talk us through this potential fashion minefield. Robin Gavon is a Pulitzer Prize winner with the Washington Post, and she's the fashion editor of the newspaper. And Robin, you are of counsel to help us out here. The designer, I understand, is Isabel Toledo, and tell us all you know about this.
Well, Isabel Toledo has actually been in business for quite a while, but she is a real entrepreneur. She's independent. She has a very small business. It's not easy to find her clothes. They're only sold in a handful of stores, and she doesn't advertise either because, that's just sort of beyond her budget. So this is someone who is really part of that rarely seen world of true independent designers on 7th Avenue.
And so much, Robin, has been said about this new First Lady, and I've read a lot of the coverage as well, how great she looks in clothing, period, how she is able to turn a J.Crew outfit, affordable to most American families, even during a recession, into something that looks more like high fashion. Just her comfort in her own being.
Right.
And I am assuming that her endorsement of a designer name is hugely valuable right now.
Well, Brian, you're quite the fashion connoisseur, and you're absolutely correct. For a designer, particularly someone like Isabel Toledo, to have her ensemble being worn on such an auspicious occasion, it's something that you couldn't possibly buy. It's something that just will resonate so much with people because it puts this woman's name out there into the vernacular, and it's really been a name that's only been known within the design industry. She's really a designer's designer, as they say. Very well respected.
And I guess that the next round of speculation is about tonight and what Michelle Obama comes out in for the 10 inaugural balls this evening.
Indeed, there is veritable hyperventilation as we wait to see what she's going to be wearing this evening. And they have kept a tight lid on it. There were multiple gowns made, and so even designers who created a gown aren't quite sure if she's actually going to wear it.
And what about what former first ladies, let's limit it to our lifetime, what former first ladies have been the kind of potential fashion icons, though that's a heavy word, that Michelle Obama may well promise to be?
Yeah, I mean, just on the topic of icon, I mean, I have heard that even Michelle Obama is somewhat uneasy with that term, because that certainly sets quite a high standard for your appearance every single day. But honestly, I think that we'd have to really go all the way back to Jackie Kennedy before we really started to get someone who kind of played on that, in that field, the field of, you know, being an icon. Someone who really had a style that was emulated, but more importantly, I think someone who had a style that really seemed to say something quite personal about who she was and about what the administration was all about.
Now, I don't know what the deadline is at the Post. Are you going to make it when she emerges tonight to get in the morning papers with the ball gown?
I'm sure we'll stop the presses.
Stop the presses. Robin Gavon, thank you so much for talking a fashion-challenged person through this topic. I appreciate you coming by.
My pleasure.
Thank you. From the Washington Post newsroom. We have another special guest, and anyone who has covered the White House over the past several years has come to know this guy intimately, but more important, the presidents and first families who have lived there know Gary Walters as the veteran former White House chief usher. And as we go to you, Gary, in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, the moving van, the last of the vans, departs. You started, correct, for President Reagan.
That's correct, as the chief usher.
And what is the job, first of all, of chief usher?
Well, the chief usher is responsible for the activities that take place in the residence. First is the home of the president. Secondly is the site of official and ceremonial events on the grounds and in the house. And thirdly, as a museum of American history. The White House is open 5 days a week to the American public.
Now, starting with the thunk of that limousine door, with both of the families in it, they're leaving the driveway in the north lawn of the White House. What chain of events started then today?
Organized chaos is the way I refer to it. It's a choreograph that takes place. It's been about 6 months in the making. Conversations have been held with the Obama family since they were introduced to the president, by the president, the sitting president, to the chief usher. That occurred, I think, in the middle of November. And there have been a series of books that were presented to the family to stimulate conversation. What kind of bedding do they want? What kind of furniture do they want moved around? What do they want done to the girls' rooms? So when you said the clunk of that door, that was the starting gun.
And it's very notable here in Washington that President Obama has chosen, at least for now, to keep the rug in the Oval Office, because the rug in the Oval Office was roughly based on Laura Bush's own design. It has kind of a sunburst pattern heading out, and the Bush family has viewed that as a great courtesy, correct?
That's correct. And it's certainly, that carpet was a carpet that was, the basic design goes back to the Reagan administration. President Reagan had a carpet that was designed that didn't come until the last 2 years of his 8-year term, and that was the starting point for the design that Mrs. Bush came up with. But if you've ever heard the president give a discussion of that rug and what it means to him, it's very meaningful to him, and he'd always get tears in his eyes when he explained hope, that the rays going out from the presidential seal.
Gary, there's your former boss. A wave of the hand from the top of the steps. This is the aircraft that normally serves as Air Force One, yet we say so often, without the president on board, it's instead a special air mission, followed by the tail number of the aircraft. One of 2 747s used for that task. Those Lester, you'll know this, those engine nacelles are so shiny because the staff out at Andrews Air Force Base cleans them with Windex. Okay. It's the most loved, most cared for, poured over aircraft in the world.
You know, if Barack Obama wins another term, he may, and I emphasize may, ride on a new Air Force One. And the Air Force is taking, at least submitting bids of interest, looking at later versions of the 747, even the European Airbus.
And Gary, while we still have you, it makes a huge difference, I think, for the life of the White House, for the first time since the Kennedys, to have young children there.
It does. Children bring a different dimension to the White House. There'll be sleepovers, there'll be some movies, cartoons that'll be shown, I'm sure, in the family theater. The bowling alley will get a bit more use. The children will be out with, I understand, a puppy come the spring, training him in the South Lawn. And so it'll be a lot of fun for the kids. It's different, though, when they have this bubble that they're in at the White House. There's people around the fence 24 hours a day, and I think that's difficult for any child that's growing up at the White House. But there are other perks that come along with that.
Yeah, I've witnessed some of them, and we can presume the rest as the new First Family gets used to their new digs. Stick around with us for 1 second. We'll fit a break in here, our live coverage of this Inauguration Day for the new 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama, continues from Washington right after this.
What if you could give your family just what they want this holiday for one low price? Introducing Sprint Family Plans. You'll get unlimited nationwide text, video, picture messaging, and more. And save at least $240 a year over comparable AT&T and Verizon plans. What better way to bring the family together? America's most dependable 3G network. Come to a Sprint store and find out how much you can save.
How much a refreshment does just $1 buy? Well, that depends who's pouring. Kool-Aid, delivering more smiles per gallon.
I want it both ways. New Revlon Creme Gloss. Extraordinarily rich color, extreme light reflecting shine for lavishly smooth, explosively sexy lips. New Revlon Creme Gloss.
I'm there. The world changing right before my eyes. Not just witnessing the impossible, but living it. Watching it all fall apart one day, then pull itself together the next. Crying, laughing, wondering, believing, hopeful, and always grateful to know I'm not alone.
Saving lives.
I think I know where they are.
Solving crimes.
He murdered 17 people.
All new Medium begins the Monday after the Super Bowl on NBC.
Look both ways before crossing the street. Never run with scissors. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Our grandparents lived by these common sense lessons, and since 1939, Aldenville Credit Union has too. Our practical, honest, and safe approach has allowed families to build and secure their futures for generations. Reduced fees, better rates, and personal service make a lot of sense too. Aldenville Credit Union, the real deal since 1939.
We are back here live in Washington as our coverage and conversation continues. A couple things to update you on. Inside that building, they are having in Statuary Hall a luncheon closed to the news media for the new president. When that proceeding breaks up and they reemerge, we'll of course go back to live pictures when our cameras are allowed in. Hearing various reports around Washington, number one, as warned, cell phone service is really taxed to the point of crashing. There are temporary cell phone towers on trucks throughout this city, and yet, as we pointed out last night on NBC Nightly News, the cell phone providers have been begging people not to use unnecessary cell phone bandwidth, especially not to try to send pictures, which everyone promptly did, and it's difficult, if not impossible, to make a cell phone call in Washington. And there are some horror stories, to be honest, emerging from the security lines and all of the people this city had to accommodate today. Waits of 2 and 3 hours were not uncommon. We already know of several of our colleagues who were trying to get in, friends, family, and who eventually gave up. It was just too cold to stay waiting on the lines. Some disaster stories to come out of this long wait today. We're still joined by Gary Walters, former chief usher at the White House. Gary, the minute we went into a commercial break, all the other questions started for you. Like Lester Holt wanting to know, how do they, okay, it's 2 in the morning, you're hungry. Where do you go for a snack?
Well, the president or the first lady can make a simple telephone call. The staff isn't there 24 hours a day, but there is somebody there that would make sure that that was taken care of. The family also has their favorite foods in the pantry. They'll have them in this evening when they get back from the inaugural parade. Those conversations went on before, and so their favorite foods will be present there.
Now, Barack Obama, during our last interview, he has always said that he understands the contract he's made with the American people. He has put himself out there for the highest office in the land. He regrets the loss of his privacy. He even said to me he just sometimes wants to go out and buy the kind of shave cream he wants, walking through a Walgreens or a CVS drugstore by himself the way he used to. What about personal items, personal effects, everything a first family needs, and because of the modern day requirements of security, they can't go out and get?
Just let us know what you want, Mr. President. We'll go get it for you, and we'll see that it's there when you want it and when you need it. It's as simple as that. The responsibility of the chief usher is the privacy of the family and also to take care of those everyday needs. The president's got enough to worry about. He doesn't need to worry about his shave cream.
I've always been curious about just the privacy in general. You've got young daughters. If they want to go talk to their mom or have a spat with their mom or whatever, is there always someone around, or can they be just a family that can function on their own?
The Secret Service remains at the outside doors, the entrance to all the personal quarters. The residence staff is behind those doors, and they're only there when the family wants them there. So the family has privacy, and that's one of the things the chief usher has to ensure, that the staff is not present. In fact, the usher's office ends up being a bit of a doorkeeper. Even the president's staff and the first lady's staff have to get permission to go upstairs to see the president and first lady, and then they're announced.
You know, you're so right that they only need to ask, and then it comes to them. LBJ would go on a diet, and suddenly tons of cottage cheese would come in, Melba toast. Then he'd say, I'm tired of the diet. Ice cream would come in, cakes and candies. He liked a certain felt tip pen. Thousands of felt tip pens would come in.
Don't forget
Notebooks
Diet Shasta root beer.
Oh, yes, exactly right.
It was his huge favorite beverage. And Gary, the discretion required, you do see them at all hours. And I would imagine you can count among your close friends former presidents that you've served.
I've been very honored to serve the different presidents that I've been around and their families. And they've been very kind to me, every one of them.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, what a life, especially because it started out as a police officer guarding the residence and ended up, couldn't be more of an inside job. Gary, it's a pleasure to see you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure being here.
After all these years, Gary Walters, former chief usher at the White House. We've been talking, and of course, the inaugural address referenced America's place in the world. We wanted to check in on the reaction beyond the shores of this country. NBC News correspondent Donna Friesen is on Parliament Hill in London, where a familiar bell is tolling behind her. What is nighttime London time? Donna, good evening to you.
Good evening, Brian. Yes, 7 bongs on Big Ben behind me tonight. The euphoria that is being felt in America right now is spreading across the world. Perhaps not exactly the same level of excitement as there was on election night, when the drama was so much, will he win or won't he? Because so much of the world, of course, was pulling for Barack Obama. Tonight we did begin to see parties around London, some private parties, some more public ones where people are cheering, ecstatic. These are expat Americans partly, but also Londoners celebrating, happy that the man who they wanted to win did finally rise to power and today become president. We heard some first congratulations coming in from various world leaders today, from Gordon Brown, Prime Minister of Britain, saying that the arrival of President Barack Obama heralds a new chapter in both American history and world history. He praised him as a man of great vision and moral purpose. And the French President, Nicolas Sarkozy, was asked by a reporter if he wanted to congratulate the new president, and he said, of course, we're anxious to see him get to work so we can change the world with him. There is enormous desire around the world for Barack Obama to succeed. There was a poll released today, a survey of people in 17 countries, and it showed that 67% believe that Barack Obama can improve America's image in the rest of the world. So a lot of hope riding on this new president. Brian?
Donna Friesen, nighttime in London, and we just missed hearing from Big Ben. So the reaction just starting to the new president of the United States. By the way, we've cleared up a mystery from this morning when Michelle Obama arrived at the White House with a box with a ribbon on it. What was the gift? It was a leather-bound journal, we are told. That it can now be told, can now be